Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today as we introduce the Wellbeing Blueprint, a concrete vision for change, and a community of action. I am Tanya Tucker, and I'm with the Full Frame Initiative, and I'm extremely proud to be a part of a growing group of public sector, nonprofit, and community leaders who share a commitment to using this moment to drive changes that will move our country, move our communities towards equity, well-being, and justice. Over the next hour that we're together, you're going to hear from some of the members of this community of action that have come together over the past couple of months. We are a group of current and former government system leaders, community activists, people with lived experience, and much more. We'll introduce you to the Wellbeing Blueprint through a range of perspectives. Please know that this is truly an invitation to be curious, to connect, to act, and to work together. This event is really only the beginning, and we'll need all of you to help shape where we go next. So this is really about people and centering on what matters to all of us. So let's hear from a few people from across different sectors about how the blueprint is resonating with them. And we hope that after our hour together, that the blueprint will resonate with all of you in lots of different ways.
I am an artist in the broadest sense of the word. I paint, I write, I perform. But also another dimension is I consider myself a community builder. I was really excited to read the Wellbeing Blueprint because I felt, that it reinforces something I believed for a long time. And that is the idea that often people come into communities, distressed communities, and say, well, this is the problem we've identified, we're going to fix it for you. Well, that's not the way it works. For me, I look at some of the issues, like tenant rights, like the fair wage, like food deserts, and I see communities themselves saying we have to start taking the initiative and we have to organize ourselves to make this work. This document celebrates that. It says, how do we help you? It looks at the assets that are already existing there, and it touches and works with those that are already very aware what the assets are and the issues and the problems. They don't have to reinvent anything. The solutions exist within community. If we can come together as a group and work around these kinds of initiatives, I think we will actually be building communities that are self-reliant, inclusive, diverse, and most importantly, based on personal human relations.
I am the Executive Director with Justice for Families, a national network of family leaders impacted by the juvenile justice system. It is important that we embrace the blueprint and well-being. It is important because everyone's well-being matters, whether you're a young person, whether you're a family member, whether you're a staff member at one of these institutions. It does matter. It's crucial that we embrace the principles of the well-being blueprint, because it's really bringing awareness, even more awareness to what's happening today during the COVID-19. I think this is a great opportunity to create partnerships, to create trust, to build relationships. And this pandemic has really highlighted the importance of not working in silos, the importance of working as community.
I have worked in several organizations that have taken the path less traveled, and with some very wise leaders. And the thing that these organizations and leaders had in common is that they put people first. You know what to do when you put people first. You get the answers from the people how to best support them. The Blueprint is not another program, but a place to connect around some common values. I think the focus on well-being is so important because it's systemic and it's life-affirming.
Over my 7 years as Juvenile Justice Director and almost 5 years as Child Welfare Director, we always took the philosophy that if you want to change your destination, you have to start from a different place. We tried to think fundamentally in a different way about the children, youth, families, and communities that we were serving in order to find solutions to the challenges that they were facing. But with all the progress that we made, it was just not enough. And here's why. Those who are innovating are literally swimming upstream every day against a very strong current of how the system currently operates, of our history of structural racism, of the way the people that we serve are viewed by those in power and those who control resources and policy. People are ready for dramatic change and need a blueprint for moving forward, a blueprint that's not specific to juvenile justice or child welfare or economic security or domestic violence, but actually cuts across systems.
So the Wellbeing Blueprint, I support, I embrace, and I'm looking forward to see a new norm that it's helping young people and families thrive.
I myself pledge to help in any way I can, whether it's through my art, whether it's through my personal communications and connections, to make this a viable solution for the future.
I swore when I retired that the work I wanted to do later was not the work rooted in swimming upstream, but the work that was rooted in turning the river. Please join me in turning the river in the right direction, in doing what would truly honor our young people, our children, our families, and that would address the systemic racism and the other issues that have held us back in this country for far too long.
Hi, my name is Sixto Canto. I'm the founder and CEO of Think of Us, a systems change nonprofit leveraging tech to improve the lives of young people impacted by foster care. Today, I'm honored to represent young people who've grown up in the foster care system and other youth serving systems.
Hi all, my name is Tammy Mello. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's League of Massachusetts. We are a collective membership agency that advocates for policy and resources that lead to better outcomes from children and youth in the Commonwealth. I am honored today to represent the lived experience of individuals and families who work in systems such as housing, TANF, child welfare, and juvenile justice.
Thank you, Tammy. So I'm really honored to be here today because it really represents the importance of community. And today there are so many people here who are from so many different sectors. I want to take a moment to look back for a second, though. A little over 100 days ago, our country went through a shift, a forever changing event that paused the entire globe to consider what is our current well-being. For the first time in over 100 years, I'm going to assume that the last pandemic is when people had this moment, is that everyone stopped for a second to say, how am I doing? Am I physically safe? Am I mentally healthy, etc. And this moment is very significant because what this moment has sparked for so many is the realization that our current communities, our current systems are experiencing their people potential of having the potential of their well-being being affected. So as we're thinking, we are here today because we believe that these systems, the systems that are responsible for ensuring well-being, are not working the way that they should always work, and that there's an opportunity to improve and in many cases to transform to the thing that is needed. And so Tammy and I are going to talk a little bit here about what is the vision from being a member of this lived experience community.
So thanks, Sixto. I think I'd like to add too, like, why well-being? What is it about well-being? And I think what's really critical to just reiterate is that we're all hardwired for well-being, and we know that our contexts provide us vastly different access to well-being based on our race, gender, orientation, religion, wealth, and other factors. And so if you're wondering why well-being is at the core of everything that we're talking about today and the core of this blueprint, it's because as human beings, we are all hardwired for these things. And a recognition, and I think the COVID crisis really has elevated a conversation in a way that prior to COVID, these disparities have been in place for years. Structural racism and systemic racism has been in place for years. And so many of you on this call represent years and years and years of work on these issues. What's most valuable are those that have lived experience, this has been what you've lived and breathed your entire lives. And the Wellbeing Blueprint really provides us an opportunity to have an anchor. To quote Tanya Tucker, who's on our kitchen cabinet and our full frame guru, there's room for everyone under the tent. And Tanya has shared that with us. And I think it's really important to just acknowledge that this is about anchoring us. Having said that, here's what this is not. This is not more language in a RFR. It's not more language in a procurement. It's not more using words like diversity and cross-training and all of those kinds of things. We're asking folks to really push yourselves in engaging in conversations and learning and hearing about what are those things mean in action, and how are we holding each other mutually accountable to moving the needle beyond talking. Yes, we want you to adhere to the guiding principles. Yes, we want you to value the things that we value. Yes, we acknowledge that as you hear more about the blueprint and where there are bright spots across the country with folks doing really important work, we may not agree on all of these things, but it shouldn't hold us back from taking steps and figuring out where there's area of commonality and where we can do things differently so that we're actually integrating into everything that we do, regardless of where you're coming from and what you're doing, these values around everyone getting equal access to well-being. And so I just want to be real clear that anybody can do this work, and you're going to hear a lot more as the hour goes on about what you can do as an individual, what you can do as an organization. And we're really thrilled at the opportunity to provide a forum and a platform for you to connect with other folks, either locally in your own communities who are really interested in having some difficult conversations and working collectively. But in addition to that, to talking to folks across the country who are grappling with many of the same things, or some that have tried to do some things differently and having success and seeing outcomes. And so we're really thrilled that you're all able to join us in this journey, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on opportunities to really expand all of our thinking and stretching ourselves and looking at where the possibilities are in action.
So Tammy, one of the things that I get very excited about, and from witnessing from the folks that the work to date, is really like the answer that I see clearly, which is what is going to be different about this initiative? There's so many well-being initiatives, there's so many initiatives, there's new things to be part of, and it seems like COVID has actually kicked us into like always working every single hour of the day, right? And so I wanted to just mention a few things that I believe that what's going to make this experience different. It's not about just the organizers of setting this experience and making it different that way, but it's how we all choose to show up when we're doing this work and being part of this this body of work, right? And so that's one, being true and authentic to the fact that we need to have lived people with the lived experience from the community, not just engage, but truly integrate it into the process as an equal person, right? When I think about what else makes us different and what we're looking to create here, it's a group of people who are continuously doing action. There's so much conversation. And so we've come to the point where there's a moment right now that the entire country, the entire world is having this collective experience about what is the well-being of myself, of my neighbor, of the people who live in my state, in my county. What does that well-being actually look like? That it is the energy and the inertia that we can go ahead and leverage to do. I think Laura said it best when she said that this is the moment that we have a true opportunity to look at these systems that are problematic, that are inequitable, that were designed from the very beginning not to allow every single individual who it impacts to thrive, but it was but an opportunity for us to take those systems and say, how might we begin to just not make incremental small changes, but dare to envision the difference that we can make in every single one of our young, whether it's young people, community members' life. So it brings me great joy to be part of this initiative and to see so many people from so many different sectors, because it is this type of unity that is needed for us to learn from each other and learn what's happening, so that that way we can see something different in the lives of the young people, the people that we affect. As you can see, I'm biased for my young people. I'm always thinking about young people, but I know this is about young people and other members of the community.
Thank you. So we want to kind of shift for a minute, because we want to know about all of you that are participating today. And as Sixto said, we're thrilled to have such a diverse group of folks working and taking time out of their workday to join us for this conversation. And we hope that you continue to engage both throughout this hour and then subsequent to that. So we're going to shift to a quick poll that we're going to be doing to get a sense of who's on the call. So we're gonna, you'll see pop up on your screen, we're gonna ask that you participate in that poll, just to get a sense of geographically where we're represented and the kinds of organizations that folks are working in and or communities. So I'm gonna pause for a moment to let you do that poll. And then we'll explore the action and community information.
Okay, you have maybe a few more seconds before we close the poll. If you haven't gotten all your responses in. All right. Why don't we go ahead and close the poll and see where we are. So we can see where folks are coming from, what part of the country they're in, fields, responses in all of the choices, which is great, what sectors are represented. This is wonderful, and I think this illustrates exactly what Tammy and Sixto were talking about in their comments, that the Wellbeing Blueprint really is about across sectors, across issue areas, both system leaders and community leaders, and certainly the group that's on our call today and with us today definitely represents that. And so I'm going to give us a quick overview and sort of dig a little more into the actual Wellbeing Blueprint. the Wellbeing Blueprint. It's a set of 6 principles and more than 40 recommendations that spans fields, spans geographies. And the goal of the blueprint really is not to duplicate important work that we know is already happening within fields, but it is, as Tammy and Sixto noted, really to provide a different starting place and a way to connect our efforts across many divides. And how do we go deeper? How do we move from talking to actual real action that will matter and have a greater impact? And so there are 2 types of recommendations in the blueprint. You'll find concrete policy recommendations and recommendations for different decision-making frameworks. So I'm gonna quickly go over the 6 core principles and just give you an example of one of the recommendations for each of the principles. So the first one is start with what matters to people, well-being. And as Tammy said, all of this really is rooted in our universal drive for well-being. And so we need to be able to hold on to and build on what matters to us. So we have to structure our communities and our systems to align with and to tap into and amplify that human drive for well-being. And so making access to well-being more equitable is really going to be vital to preventing many of the harms that our systems are set up to address. And so one of the recommendations under this particular principle is to fund and carry out ongoing restorative and transformational work between systems and communities. And so really we're all here today because our systems overall are rooted in racism and based in false assumptions about people. But typically when we think of restorative work, we tend to think of kind of one system, right? Sort of the justice system, courts. And even when we think about that application, we're thinking about sort of restorative work between 2 people, right? Between a perpetrator and a victim or a victim's family. And what we're actually talking about and calling for here is something much broader and deeper. You know, courts and the court as a system has its own healing process to do with communities. And this really isn't just about the justice system. It's not just about courts, but the restorative work that needs to happen across systems. Imagine what would happen if healthcare, if housing and more really began this restorative work with communities. So this really involves all of us. The next principle is push against harms being concentrated in communities that are already facing the greatest adversity. We know we didn't all come into this crisis on level footing. And so ensuring that our responses now and as we move forward are built on an anti-racist, equity, and well-being oriented platform is going to be vital to ensuring that our responses shrink rather than widen racial and economic disparities. And so one of the recommendations here is how can we support and create space for the nascent businesses that come out of this crisis? We know that periods of economic turbulence are historically also periods of innovation. And I certainly know people, and I'm sure you all do, who are already figuring out ways to make money, to help their families, to help their neighbors, to help their communities. And so these actually may be the small businesses that will employ people during and after the crisis. So how as systems do we work to adjust or reduce regulations and requirements that limit this kind of business creation and limit it particularly in our communities of color? Build on instead of undermining social connections and social capital in communities. Our drive for social connectedness is innate, it's essential, and it's universal. We count on others. We need others to count on us, and we need to belong. And so too often what happens is that we actually create programs and services and initiatives to actually do what social networks would otherwise do. And that actually can constrain community potential and community health. And so a recommendation here is expand models and approaches that reimburse family members for caregiving as an alternative to congregate or non-kin care. This can actually build on the desire of family members to care for each other. It can make it economically feasible for people to provide care. And it also allows people in need of care, whether that's children, adults, the older adults in our lives, to actually stay connected to community. Build financial security. It's been mentioned already, but we are seeing the impact of the pandemic concentrated in communities of color and for those already facing economic hardship. So the economic recovery must address both the immediate financial stability and also address the persistent wealth gap. So with this principle, you'll see recommendations of some immediate things that folks should kind of immediately recognize. But so many of our approaches and the work under financial security and stability really focus on the income side of the equation and not on the building wealth side. So the recommendation that I'll highlight here is address the wealth gap. Inequality is perpetuated by policies that undermine families' ability to accumulate wealth and savings, and that shut out families, particularly families of color, out of asset building activities, such as home ownership. And so what can our systems do to create more pathways for families to build wealth, not just gain income? Span boundaries. Explicitly spanning boundaries, not just across fields, but also across sectors, is going to be essential for our long-term economic recovery and greater equity. And so our recommendation here is include arts and culture in community assessment, design, and change processes. We need to tap people's humanity, and we know that art and artistic expression make us human, but it's often treated as something extra, and particularly in lower income communities. Our traditional community processes often leave out whole dimensions of the human experience and community members. Think back to our opening video in Jose's house and him being a community builder and artist. He is going to be essential, and people like him in lots of communities around this country will be instrumental in driving and supporting the change that we're seeking. You know, too often when we think of spanning boundaries, it really is just about getting human services to collaborate with each other. And this is really more about centering on people and community. And I think that pushes us farther. And I think it's one of the most exciting things about the blueprint, as you've already heard from several of the folks who've spoken already today, that, you know, we're a community of activists and artists and system leaders and policymakers. And that's what's going to make this different and strong. And the final principle is set our default to sustaining transformation beyond the pandemic. We know that some of the changes that have already been made because of this crisis are going to need to be reversed or altered or further refined in some way. But defaulting to sustaining well-being oriented systems forces important accountability and reflection. And so even when this pandemic is past, this expansive thinking that we're calling for is going to be vital to fully appreciating the landscape that's before people and ensuring that we're all moving towards a fair shot at well-being. So those are the high-level principles and just an example of some of the recommendations at under each of those principles. And so let's take a quick look at the website where the blueprint lives, and hopefully all of this comes to life for all of you all. So it's wellbeingblueprint.org. And if you go here, here's our landing page, and I think our navigation on the landing page is pretty self-explanatory, but there's ways for you to join in and send in ideas and examples to sign on to the blueprint. We'll be building out, certainly over time, more news and information about events and offerings and opportunities to engage as we go on. But I want to spend a little time with how you can actually dig into the blueprint itself and the principles and the recommendations. So if you actually click on the blueprint, that will take you to the Get book, which is a new term that I just learned, and I'm going to throw it out there like I really know what that means. But that'll take you here to the Get book. And so here on the left, you've got your navigation panel, and that's where you can navigate through the blueprint and the different principles. It starts with a Start Here button, and as that name implies, it's a great place to start. That actually shows you how the blueprint is organized. It talks a bit about centering on community, actually gives you some ideas and resources and tools on how to start engaging with the blueprint and ways to begin to take action. So that's a wonderful way to start. But let's look down at some of the principles and how this is organized. So you've got your 6 principles and then recommendations under each. And so let's just go to one of the principles. Let's start with principle number 1, start with what matters to people, well-being. And so you'll see under that principle, there are 6 recommendations. You can go further and click on one of those recommendations. So let's click on recommendation 1.4, which is change structures that force unsustainable trade-offs. So you'll get a little bit of more information about that recommendation. This particular recommendation also has a resource associated with it. You can view a video to learn a little more about what we mean by trade-offs. This recommendation also has several sub-recommendations underneath it. So 4 sub-recommendations. So we can continue to go even a little deeper on this one. So let's click on the sub-recommendation 1.4.3. And so that's about creating policies with clear mechanisms for alternative responses. So a little bit about that sub-recommendation. This sub-recommendation actually has an example that's attached to it, and that example comes from the St. Louis County Family Courts. And so once you click there, you'll get a summary of this example, this bright spot happening at the St. Louis County Family Courts. That's really about recommendations to the judges for treatment and sanctions. And they're made with consideration of the trade-offs of compliance with required actions. So you get a little bit about the example. And this example actually has some a resource and a tool that's attached to it to learn a little more, which is a bench card that really illustrates the example. So you'll see, you'll be able to navigate and go deeper and deeper and be able to get resources, tools, connect to the examples and bright spots that'll be around the country. The resources and tools are actually going to be, you'll find them throughout the blueprint. So we may have a resource associated with an overall principle, with a recommendation, with a sub-recommendation. So definitely be on the lookout as where those tools are embedded within the blueprint. This is really just a start. You know, we've identified some examples and bright spots, but this is really where we need your help in building this out and really helping to shape this. We know we don't know all of the wonderful work that's happening around the country. So help us identify where that innovation and those bright spots are happening and help us build out this site over time. So this is where we are. This is just the beginning. And I'm going to now turn it over to Laura Zeilinger, who's going to talk about what comes next. Laura?
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Zeilinger, and I'm director at the District of Columbia Department of Human Services. I have the great honor to work for a mayor who is committed to equity and well-being. We've seen Black Lives Matter painted on the streets of our city in front of the White House. But we also live in a community that has perhaps the greatest wealth gap in our nation. We have been hard at work doing a lot of great things for a number of years that we think are making a difference in people's lives. But we also know that we have so much opportunity to do more. And as we think about ourselves in whether we're an advocate, a government employee, someone who is an artist, who works for a service providing organization, we're all activists. We are all advocates for equity and well-being, for inclusion, and for an anti-racist agenda. And so yet we also hear and see the calls of the Black Lives Matter movement demanding action. So this is about action and how do we act together. We know what the problems are, and we know we can see solutions at sometimes a program level or a micro level, but how do we collectively make a bigger difference together? So the blueprint, as Tanya pointed out, is a living document. It is a place where we can share what's working, what we're thinking about, and add to it. Ways that you can do that are through this website, through wellbeingblueprint.org. And it also is an opportunity to reinforce things that we know are working, but also to create a space to capture the collective intelligence of more people who are working in different areas than you might be working, and be able to learn from them. We know what we know, right? But we don't know what we don't know always. And by creating an open space for sharing among more people, we intend to capture more ideas and have more momentum together. So there is a power in collective intelligence and in having a living document, even if you don't agree on everything in it. That actually can create a more vibrant conversation and get us to a better place together. And even if your definition of well-being is not one for one with the definition provided, that's okay. There is still plenty of opportunity to work together. So some of the things that we're planning to do are to crowdsource examples, to collect ideas, to create a space for sharing. We want to work together on specific principles as part of learning cohorts. We want this to be a place where you can share the things you're proud of, that you wish people actually understood that you were doing, that are working, as well as a safe place to come together with other people to admit that there are things you just don't know and you want to learn or workshop or test out and get an opinion on, in a place where if you're sometimes in a political position, doing that may feel less safe. So a safe space among peers, colleagues, and others to share information, to ask for help, to get information, as well as to put plans to action, and to create and to hold each other accountable for staying in the course. We know that the inequities that are experienced in our communities, the racism that is built into our systems and structures, have been there for a very long time. And the work of dismantling them is not going to happen overnight, and we need to be in it for the long haul to get there together, which is why we know that we will continue to learn from one another, and having a space to keep that momentum can be very valuable and important. We also think that we have a lot of interest, and the opportunity here is that people can get out of this in terms of action and how you move forward, what you put into it. So we want you to think about what you want out of the blueprint, what you would like to see, and how you join with us in making that happen. So there is an open invitation for all of those ideas. And we are hungry for your knowledge and as well as to share with you things that we've learned along the way. We also would like to get a sense now of where your energy is, what you're hungry for, what you're looking for as part of why you tuned in today. And so we do have a poll where you can tell us that, and we're about to put that up next. And so please share with us about what's exciting to you about what you heard. What is missing? What are you hoping to get out of this? And why is this something that you may or may not, why would you want to be a part of it? So we'll have a poll in a moment coming onto the screen, but take a moment to share. We also know that you may not know that you might want to peruse the website and really think about that. And so there'll be opportunity after the launch as well if you want to come back to it and give other answers, or to answer once you've had a chance to think about it. So please feel free to share in the poll or to share in the chat.
Okay, we'll give folks just a couple more seconds. This was a short one, and we'll close the poll. All right, let's see where some initial energy may lie with this group. Again, something in all of our categories: action for structural change, which is wonderful, linking equity and well-being, seeing what's possible. I'll be eager to learn what's underneath and unpacking other, but we're happy with, just in this short time and your initial learning about the Wellbeing Blueprint, that there's already some things that you're getting excited about and energized about in terms of acting on and moving forward, which is wonderful. So I'm going to turn it over to Gladys and Tracy. Thank you, guys.
Hi. Gladys, you ready?
Yes.
Kick it off.
Hi. 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 Can you see me?
We can see you, Gladys.
Oh, great. So I'm Gladys Carrion, and I'm a senior fellow at Columbia University Justice Lab and co-chair of the Youth Correctional Leaders for Justice. And prior to that, I was commissioner leading the juvenile justice systems, child welfare, and early learning and care systems in New York State and New York City. Tracy and I will share with you what binds this community that has come together and is putting forth this well-being blueprint, what has sparked us to join this effort. And so I'll start by sharing that we have a commitment to engage in transformative change where everyone in this country has a fair shot at well-being. We share commitment to the 6 core principles of the well-being blueprint. We recognize that we don't have to agree on everything, as you've heard today. In the blueprint, we don't have to agree with everything in the blueprint to work for change. We're committed to taking action. We want and we recognize how important it is to center our work on community, because that's the anchor that drives the work. We commit to using our power and influence in the spaces we inhabit, within the public agencies, within nonprofit organizations, institutions that we lead, guide, and contribute to, in the communities we live and those we champion, networks we support, and we are committed to structural change in these spaces. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, and you're going to hear from her.
Thanks, Gladys. And I think that was a really strong initial list. And I think we're seeing a lot of those same commitments reflected in the poll results. I'm Tracy Waring-Evans, honored to be with all of you as a collaborator and ally to the Wellbeing Blueprint. As CEO of the American Public Human Services Association, I work alongside health and human service leaders across the nation and learn from them every day. I'd like to add a few more of our shared commitments as we wind up our initial conversation today. And I think you've heard these, but just really kind of making a point around them, because it's so important that I think we find this common ground that binds us together here. We share a commitment to working across boundaries and sectors, finding that connection or that intersection of the places we all live, grow, learn, work, play, where we share a commitment to honoring what have been generations of innovation and advocacy, of resistance, of struggle, that this work is meant to build on and contribute to. We share a commitment to staying in the long journey to social and racial justice, facing the structural racism that's perpetuated in our systems, and I think we've heard that from many of our speakers. And we share a commitment to learning, growing, changing, and challenging each other to keep stretching. So as we come to a close, I'd like maybe to ask Gladys to share a little bit about what motivated you to be a part of this Blueprint community, and 1 or 2 of your own priority commitments or next steps.
For me, I really understand the power in connecting people, working across disciplines with a community of like-minded people to leverage ideas, to maximize impact, and to work in partnership with community, to support and engage and drive transformative change. That's something that I've been committed through my entire professional life, and this really is a space that I feel comfortable in with people that have the same belief system. I think it's really important to do this work with a shared sense of urgency, which I think all of us have. And I understand that working in community works and nurtures and sustains real change. My commitment is to use the principles to guide and inform my work, to work in partnership with community, to define and engage, to define structural change. What does that mean to us? To share with others and create opportunities for shared learning and action. Those are my commitments. So Tracy, I'd like to hear what yours are.
Thanks, Gladys. Similarly, I think really committed to doubling down on a commitment that my own organization has to building well-being from the ground up. It's a core principle of how we operate. And really thinking about what that means in terms of listening with much greater intentionality to communities. And I think back to the opening video and the contributions of art and community organization and leadership. And also about broadening our network and connections with leaders who share this aligned way of thinking. As an immediate next step, just as an example, I plan to make at least one new connection with an ally who isn't already in the orbit I work in, right? And learn from them, ask questions, be curious, think about the ways that together we can ensure everyone has that fair shot at well-being, looking for things that we could ignite together, being practical about solutions that are within our reach right now, but with this constant line of sight to what it's going to take to create new foundations and structures that work for all of us. So really honored to be a part of the folks who've come together, and look forward to meeting and talking with many of you. We really appreciate the opportunity to be on the journey with you, and I'm going to turn it back to Tanya, who's going to bring us to a close.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Gladys, so much. And thank you, all of you all who have joined us today. I've been going through the chat, and there's just some wonderful comments and questions that are coming up, and we promise to, we've been monitoring that, and probably won't have an opportunity to answer everything, but we promise that we're taking all of the questions. We'll have responses to them, and along with a recording of this webinar, we'll post it to wellbeingblueprint.org. One question stood out to me that I did want to respond to, because I think it really speaks to and will reiterate a point and message that many of us had during the hour. So someone wanted to know, as a living site, do you anticipate that the framework itself and the principles may be modified as more knowledge is collected? And absolutely. I think it was Laura who said, right, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And so that is certainly what we want to happen. This truly is our starting place. And we need all of you all who are going to engage with this and act on the principles and recommendations. I'm certain there are more recommendations that can go as a part of this. There are certainly more examples and bright spots, and that's what we'll need all of you helping us identify and share, so this becomes as robust a site as possible. We knew, that we'd have to sort of introduce and unveil the blueprint at some point in time, but knew that that point in time did not mean that this encapsulated absolutely everything. So it is incomplete, and we'll need all of you as part of this community of action to help us continue to build it out, to shape it, and to make it robust. So thank you so much for that question. So there are a lot of next steps. So first of all, the slide that's up, we're hoping that all of you all leave this hour more curious than when you started, and actually want to sort of dig in and engage with the Wellbeing Blueprint and begin to share your ideas and how to improve and how to add to it. We want you to submit an example. We want you to connect us to the wonderful people that perhaps we're not connected to and don't have relationships with, who this really does align in some way with the work that's already happening. And so how do we bring them into this big tent? And so this isn't about sort of abandoning your own work and the frameworks that you're already using, and it's an either or proposition. There really is room for everyone, and we want to be connected to those organizations, agencies, coalitions that are really aligned with our values, and so we can join together for this larger vision. We'd love it if you made a commitment to action. I forget which one of our speakers said, but I think one of the exciting things about the blueprint is you can act on the blueprint principles and recommendations as an individual in your family, in your neighborhood and community, as a leader of an entire system, in an organization. So there's lots of different entry points for lots of different people in different roles. So we really hope that this resonates with you and you find your entry point to action. I've already mentioned, help us make the blueprint stronger. There'll be opportunities to join a change cohort. Perhaps there are folks who want to work together and collectively on one principle or one recommendation. So how can we connect you with each other to share and learn around that action? And then we really are inviting you to share with us what you need, what you'll bring to this effort, or anything else that will help us with this. In order for this to be successful, it really isn't about the number of people who sign on, and at the end of the day, we'll check a box like, great, the blueprint was successful. This really is about the action that will come and creating that larger community of action. And so it has to be rooted in what that community action needs. What are your wants? What's going to be valuable to you, and what's really going to advance this work for you in a meaningful way? So we hope that you'll join us in all of these different ways as we move through this journey together. So you'll be getting a follow-up survey from us within a couple of days. Please, you don't have to wait for this. I hope that you'll get off this call and begin to go to the website and begin exploring right away. Help build momentum as you see fit. Invite others to join in and to be curious as well. I know probably many of you got this invitation from a friend, a colleague. Reach back out to them. Let's share with them, what you thought and what your sort of initial ideas and questions are. Perhaps there's some low-hanging fruit and some initial partnership and collective work that could happen that way. The members of the Kitchen Cabinet, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be reaching out to folks that we invited and encouraged to come, to get feedback, to get questions, to really shape where we go with this next. We're developing lots of different engagement opportunities. Again, we want this rooted in what's going to be useful and valuable to all of you. We know that one of our immediate opportunities within a couple of weeks will be really to have a virtual event for conversation and discussion around this. We were able to present the blueprint and all of the different facets, and now we really want to hear from you and create that space to have a conversation. What's resonating, what's exciting, what questions do you have, what ideas, and that will help us shape. So you'll get information about that and ways to join that. Feel free to please reach out to us and share your thoughts and ideas, and think about how is it, I think it was Sixto who said, how is it that you're going to choose to show up for this moment and for the Wellbeing Blueprint? I want to thank you all for joining us, for your interest, for your curiosity. We're eager to connect with you and to move this vision forward. So thanks again, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.